Jesus really lived. I mean, what year do we live in? 2009. Well, 2009 what? What does that mean? It means 2009 years after the birth of a fantasy?
Those actually have Latin meanings. AD and BC.
Yeah, exactly. It has to do with the birth of Christ. Not a fantasy, an historical person. I mean, we're not talking fantasy here, we're talking history.
It's a widely accepted belief, so they based the times off of a widely accepted belief. That doesn't mean it's true.
Well, I'm fully aware that the fact we live in 2009 does not mean Jesus is true. I agree with you. But to try and argue that Jesus is a myth, I mean, there's a little too much historical evidence that he was a real historical person.
I believe he's a real person.
Well, good. So what's your argument?
I just don't believe that there's a God, period.
Well, why not?
Because there's just so many, like in physics, there's so many ways to disprove that.
Well, how do you disprove God in physics? Please tell me. I would really be fascinated.
Well, basically, you're using a God to fill a gap. Because,
no, I'm not.
Okay, the Aztecs would have
I'm not an Aztec, sir. I don't believe in the Aztec religion.
I'm making a point with this, though. The Aztecs would use a god for rain. The Egyptians would have a god for farming and pregnancy and such. Okay, because we can't explain the origin of the universe, we put a god there.
That's not what I do.
Why is that? What do you mean?
I'll tell you why. On the way to school today, I found this on the side of the road.
Okay.
Man, isn't it incredible? The way the metal just sort of came together. The glass just sort of flew into place. The extra pieces of metal just sort of fell off. And lo and behold, as a result of the impersonal plus chance plus time, this wristwatch popped into existence. If you thought I believed that, you'd go running out of here so fast I couldn't catch you. Why? Because the order and design of this wristwatch demands a watchmaker, an intelligent mind. This eye, your eye, is so much more intricate than this wristwatch. There's no comparison. If you demand that I believe there's a watchmaker behind this wristwatch, and then you demand that I believe that behind this intricate eye, there's the impersonal plus chance plus time, I have a rational problem with you.
There's evolution that solves that problem.
Evolution doesn't solve any problem. Evolution is a process or it's an origin. I accept evolution as a process. But you see, you're not using science here. You're using a philosophical argument, which is behind the process, there's no intelligent mind. There's just accident. And I'm sorry, rationally, I can't accept that. Two scientists.
But it's philosophical to say that God has always been there. There's no scientific proof to prove that. So that's philosophical. That's not scientific at all.
Very good.
So why would you say, by me saying evolution is philosophical and not scientific?
Okay, good. You have to, you're right, I didn't explain this, I'm sorry. When you talk about evolution, you have to divide evolution into two parts.
Macro, micro.
No. Origin, process. Evolution as an origin is philosophy. Because evolution as an origin is saying, behind the process of evolution, there's no intelligent mind, there's just fate and chance. That's philosophy. You can't scientifically prove that. That is not scientifically verifiable. What is scientifically verifiable is, if you take some pigeons and breed them a certain way, you can bring out certain plumes, certain feathers, certain physical characteristics. If you breed horses a certain way or dogs a certain way, you can come up with certain strains.
Are you aware of chemical evolution and how chemicals form cells and then cells evolve to a higher step? Because it's a random mixture of chemicals. Because atoms move, they just move around in physics, and they randomly run into each other and create compounds.
Okay, well, good, no problem. But see, but still the question is there an intelligent mind, which is obviously a philosophical question, is there an intelligent mind behind this amazing process, or is there just fate and chance?
See, that's where you have to, you're just putting yourself on this limb. It's either do you believe there's this creator or do you not? And there's no way to prove that, ever.
That's right. Instead, you have to ask, what is most reasonable to believe? Is it more reasonable to believe that this wristwatch came about by chance, Or is it more reasonable to believe there's an intelligent mind behind this order and design?
But if you think intelligently, why is it acceptable to believe that there's always been a deity versus that there's always been a universe?
Well, forget about it. Well, because the Big Bang shows us the universe is not eternal.
Well, I know that.
The universe has a beginning.
But the Big
So
Bang
the universe is
theory.
not eternal. So because it's not eternal, it has a beginning. And everything that has a beginning has a cause. So the question is, what's the cause for the universe? What's the cause for the complexity of a single cell?
What's the cause for God?
Well, no, God's eternal, so God doesn't have a cause. Great point. See, because God is eternal, he does not have a beginning. And because he doesn't have a beginning, he does not have to have a cause. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause.
The belief of God is like the belief of afterlife. So do you believe in the afterlife?
Nope.
So you believe on your deathbed, you're gonna be
Just
like,
gonna die.
you're just gonna die and like your mind shuts off and everything.
Yep.
I don't believe that.
Right.
One of the issues
But
I
I
have with
respect
that
you.
is you're actually seeking to define something you don't know. So when you're making the argument against him that he's creating a God where we don't know what exists, you don't know if there's an afterlife or not, but yet you're deciding that there is no God, there is no afterlife without any proof of that.
Yeah, but you can prove that something dies. You can't prove what happens after it dies.
Exactly. Just
So-
like you can't prove where
That's what it
God,
comes down to
prove
belief
where
and
God
faith.
comes
But you can't.
to believe.
But
to faith.
you'd have no idea if nothing happens or if you ascend to a special place.
So how can you walk around and say, I believe that there's nothing that comes?
Then
I
how
would,
can you
I,
walk
I, I
around
would
and believe
understand you
that there
better
is
if you would
something
say,
that comes?
I have questions, I'm skeptical, possibly nothing after this life happens further. But when you walk around and you say, it doesn't, that's just a negative attitude.
But
You
people
don't
walk
know.
around all the time saying that you do go to heaven. I'm just arguing the opposite.
You bet, and I respect you. You're absolutely right. If there is no God, there's definitely no life after death. You're absolutely correct. Now, have you pushed it though further? Take your worldview, which is there is no God, and live it out consistently, reasonably. Because there is no God, do you realize that love is simply a biochemical reaction?
What's wrong with that?
I didn't ask if anything was wrong with it. I just asked you, do you realize that if there is no God, love is simply a biochemical reaction,
Sure. Yeah,
right?
I accept that.
You accept that. Okay, which means when your girlfriend, if she ever does, turns to you and says, I love you, you understand what she really means is, you have excited certain biochemical reaction inside of me that happens to be going off right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So also when you go back home for vacation, you realize that when your mom or dad say, I love you, what they really mean is, because you're one of my offspring, I am so genetically tied to you that biochemically I am predetermined to feed you.
Yeah.
I don't really care for you. I don't love you in a sense of a free will that's choosing to care for you. I just have this biochemical reaction that's going off, right?
Sure. But there's parents who leave their offspring all the time.
Exactly. Which points to the fact that there is more to reality than just this biochemical reaction, doesn't it? Because there are deadbeat dads, aren't there?
Yeah.
There are parents who choose not to care for their children, which should inform you that there's something more going on than your worldview is allowing for.
That's not true.
All right, fine. If you're right that there is no God, is there such a thing as free will?
Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
Oh yeah? Who's you? If there is no God, who is you? Who is me? It's a complex biochemical reaction, isn't it? That's all there is. There's no him who has a free will. There's a complex biochemical reaction in this brain. And if he treats me nicely, I'm grateful, but if he treats me horribly, well, he didn't have any choice. That's what his biochemical reaction programmed him to do.
Okay.
Well, not just okay, that's the truth, isn't it? If what you say is true, that there is no God, right? Remember? We're just complex biochemical reactions. Wham! Why'd you do it, Cliff? Because I had to, sir. My biochemical reactions programmed me to haul back and hit you as hard as I could. That's why I did it. We can't live that way, though, can we?
You can, though.
You're right, you can. Do you?
I don't.
Why not? If you
Because I
believe
don't
it,
want
why
to.
can't you live it out? That's exactly my point. See, sir, you can't live out atheism. You can't live out the idea that we're just a complex biochemical reaction.